Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. Today is episode 55 of AI GTM Talks. My name is Iyer, here with Kwanzu. And for those of you who are new to this talk series, we kicked it off over a year ago. We bring on either AI GTM tech CEOs who go deep into different areas within AI for go-to-market. We bring on revenue leaders who are transforming go-to-market at their own companies using AI apps, tech, and tools. And then we also bring on subject matter experts, people who are really deep in different areas within AI for go-to-market. Today, really excited to have David Quaid, who's heads up a primary position. David, you're back with us. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks so much for having me back on, Manny. I really enjoyed the last episode. So it's great to be here.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, David, I'm going to put up the next slide, which maybe a good way to start would be if you want to tell folks a little bit about primary position and what you all do, the kind of customers you're working with, SMB, mid-market, enterprise. Give them a flavor of what you all do. I know the broad topic for today is all around AI, SEO, GEO, all the related topics. So, yeah, back to you, David.
Great. So I typically work with tech companies from Series A to C and get them from Series A to C or acquisition. So I've worked with 9 companies to pass the $300 million mark in the last 6 years.
Hmm.
So it's been very successful. And I've done all of that through Google, through both SEO and paid search.
Yeah.
And now we're on the cusp of the next revolution, which is AI search. And I think that a lot of people have questions, and there's probably more questions than anything else in terms of AI search. I think we've passed the peak era of data attribution in the last few years, and we're starting in a whole new world together, so to speak.
Got it. Got it. So, look, I think it'd be so just to set people's expectation. I know we have come up with a series of interesting topics. We're going to start kind of broad, and then we're going to go deep in specific areas. Even last time, I'll tell you what I really enjoyed about the conversation was a lot of things that are very specific, actionable information that you were, sharing with people. Um, do you also have anything you're able to share along the way, or is it going to be more of a discussion? How do you think we want to do it today?
I think today we'll talk a lot about the concepts and sort of the skills that people need in order to figure out. Right, there's since our last discussion, not a lot has changed. There's been no new release of data except for AI Bing reports. I can touch on it, except it's just not super useful.
Mm.
Um, I think what we're looking at now is a repeat of a challenge, right? Where except that it's a new challenge that in the last few years we've had so much attribution, right? We've had so much data collection. When we're buying keywords in Google, for example, we know what the ROI per keyword is, and a lot of that is going to disappear in the AI world. Also, there's a sort of ideological war, right, happening between the old SEO industry, which I think is the current SEO industry, and the new emerging geo industry, which I think wants to paint a different picture. And so that's going to
Yeah.
be confusing for people. And I think having the right skill set to interview, assess, and make decisions is going to be quite important, right? Because there is no data. So no one really knows how many people are searching for your brand. So if you're hoping that today we can help sort of figure out how often your brand is being found, what kind of searches people are doing. No one has that data, or at least the people who have that data aren't sharing it, right? And so one of the
Okay.
problems I think is that the LLM providers or AI search tools, they want to be seen as the Google killers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge for them is that the type of compute power that they need, which is neural network compute power. That's why NVIDIA chips are so important. They can do geographical shapes and that matches patterns, right? So when they're trained, they're learning patterns, right? So the reason that Reddit is such a great training base for Gemini is that there's so many sentences and so many use cases, and they're essentially learning all of those paths and memorizing
Got it.
them.
Yeah, so look, I think I wanted to at least set the stage a little bit for folks, and I just want to run through the different topics we're going to
Sure.
cover, right? So that they can follow along. So I know the way you've kind of sketched out the outline of discussion points. I just want to at least lay that out for people. We're going to be talking about the current state of traditional SEO, Google search, and AI SEO, AI search engines, how they work. We will talk about that. What's happening across the two, information, disinformation. I know that's one thing you wanted to cover. What is the challenge that people face in terms of being able to effectively utilize these channels? What is eroded in terms of what used to be versus what it is now? I know you've then laid it out as old channels, traditional channels versus the newer channels. You've got some things you want to cover there. uh, I think from there, I think we're going to go on and talk about the data sources and how they're fragmenting, right? When it comes to data that utilized by these search engines for AI, SEO, GEO, and SEO. You've got some interesting points to make about how do you build trust on the web. So I want to get to that topic next. And then I think you also have a topic here about how does somebody even go about looking at potential partners to help them with search and SEO type of work. You have a lot of, I think, experience there because you run this channel, I think, on Reddit, or at least you're one of the moderators, I believe, of a SEO specific subreddit. Is that right? That and pretty significant community of SEO folks.
So I have I have my own small subreddit, and I have a sort of a large community on X.
Okay, got it. And then I think we're going to finish up by talking specifically about some little tips and tricks on how to use AI. In terms of
Yes,
you know,
in terms of
in,
your
you know,
marketing
in
organization, what's safe to use at the moment? Yeah.
correct. What's safe to use in terms of increasing your brand presence, improving your brand presence, and so on. So I think we have quite a few topics, and I know we got about about 40 minutes to get through this. Let's keep chugging. So
Okay.
please set the big stage. So you said the big stage issue for now, if you look at the last 12 months since you last came, is there is something going on between traditional SEO and AI SEO GEO in terms of people's understanding or information disinformation. Can you elaborate? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the problem is that some sectors are painting AI search as independent search engines, right? That they're a smarter, evolved Google, and they are in the sense that before you would get 10 results, you would pick a result, read into it, and maybe one or two more. The difference now is that those 10 results are being summarized by an AI for you, and it's giving you the consensus between those. Um, a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, and a lot of people that are building geo tools and geo agencies are trying to present that LLMs make up their own mind and they have their own reasoning for picking brands. And I think that's a misrepresentation of reality.
Okay.
There's only really three search engines that cover the World Wide Web, and that's Google, Bing, and then others like Brave Search, Baidu, DuckDuckGo, and well, DuckDuckGo uses Bing, and Yandex, which covers the Russian market. Um, LLMs don't do the same job. They sit above search engines, primarily Google. And so the things that you need to do to get into an AI still require SEO. I think
Mm,
I see my LinkedIn feed is full of people saying that AI uses different trust mechanisms. It goes to G2 a lot. It goes to Capterra a lot, and it has its own brand assessments. And I don't think that's really true. And one of
okay.
the ways we've disproven that is we've taken prompts which will surface a number of brands, looked at the query fan out. That's something we did on the last show. We looked at the query fan out
Yeah.
and entered the brand messaging in the same day. So we've taken a brand that was invisible and put it into the conversation. Now, doing that isn't an exact science, but it's not a different model, right?
Mm,
And so I think for a lot of CMOs, demand gen people, marketing people that are being told that they have to run schema and they have to create clear content, these things really don't mean that much for AI tools. I think that's a bit of smoke and mirror and a bit of confusion. I think quite often the people telling us that don't actually know. I mean, if you go to Claude or um, ChatGPT and ask it how it works, it will tell you that because it's just reading that from another blog, and it's essentially being fed by Google. I don't think Google's going to give us the data because right now they're suing a company called SERP API. SERP
Hmm.
API is able to get around Google's search guard. Search guard stops other sites from being able to scrape Google results.
Hmm.
And until that's resolved, I don't think Google are going to come out and say much more.
Okay.
And so that's why we have a sort of dark data problem.
Okay. I think we'll need to dig into one of the things you said, but I'm going to table that for now because I was really curious about what you just said about there is a certain impression that marketers have about what they need to create, what kind of content they need to create to show up in the AI search engine. I think, but what you're saying is that may not be. They may have a sorry, improper understanding of what they really need to do. I want to get to that a
Exactly.
little bit later, but
Mhm.
let's go to the next topic to me, which is there was traditional SEO search. There is the newer, search paradigms using AI, SEO, GEO. Can you talk about the old and what it was, and then what has changed?
Yeah. So what has changed is that the LLMs will change the prompt into a different set of queries. And the number of queries they're branching out to over the last year has gone from 3 to 9 in some cases. And so it's becoming more and more difficult and less predictable to show up for each one, right? So, as an example, if you had a SaaS company that provided billing solutions for companies, right? You would typically want to rank for something like SaaS billing platform. The LLMs have changed that where they might search for best SaaS billing platform reviews 2026, or they might put 2025 in there. And this change in search queries is known as the drift. And so keeping up with that drift is problematic and new. And you can't really predict which user is going to get which drift. So while the drift is limited, there's some variations per LLM. So that's it's not as predictable. Whereas before, if you were in the top 3 positions for best SaaS CRM, it was a predictable, reliable thing for both Google Ads and for Google Search, where you knew you were going to be constantly repeated, and
Hmm.
that's shifted a little bit.
Got it.
You,
And then I think the channels you mentioned a bunch here. So has anything changed with the new way AI is come into play for SEO GEO? I mean, you've talked about organic channels, paid channels, social referral channels like apps and so forth.
yes.
What are some of the changes that you see a year ago versus now in those kind of
So there's
channels?
there's two there's two big changes happening at the same time. The first change is that the original channel. So if you're using HubSpot or Salesforce or Google Analytics, you're used to the same channels. That's direct, which means unknown,
Yeah.
search, social, and referral. And then you've got a paid search and a paid social sub channel. And
Hmm.
everything sort of fell into those, and email sometimes, right? And
Yeah.
those channels were defined back in the 1990s by the W3C Council. And the
Right.
idea was that everybody who was surfing the World Wide Web did so from a browser. And so when you went from one window to another, um, the previous window would tell the next window where you came from. So if you came from a search engine, it would say search. If you came from LinkedIn, it would be referral. If you came from an email, it would be email. Those
Hmm.
channels over the last 26 years have died off, especially in the last 12 months.
Hmm.
So now if you go to your analytics tool, you'll probably see that direct traffic is now maybe as high as 38% of your traffic. You
Interesting.
might see that your paid search program is sending you 4,000 clicks a month, and analytics is only accounting for 2,500. So
Hmm.
there's a significant delta of 30%, and that's because of the cookie opt out. So people are saying, I don't want cookies stored. And now analytics becomes blind to that traffic. It's like the traffic never happened. The
Hmm.
other thing is mobile development. So if people are on the LinkedIn app and you put up a company post and they click on the link, it shows as direct traffic because it's not an in-browser event. So all of those things on one hand are eroding the traditional channels. the AI channels will also show up as direct traffic if it's from an app, or as referral traffic. So now your referral traffic could include all your social media and 5 or 6 different AI tools. And so you have to dig below. So referral is no longer a useful channel name, right? Also, when somebody sees your name in a AI setting, you don't know how many impressions you've had, except for Copilot. So Copilot data now comes through the Bing Webmasters tool, which is very
Mm,
easy to set up. And it provides very interesting data, and it'll give you some idea of how many pages are being cited and what kind of grounding queries, in other words, the queries that support the prompt, are showing. So
mm.
that's a real data place, but unfortunately, it's possibly only as much as 5% of AI data. So for ChatGPT, when it uses Bing, or Claude when it uses Brave Search, Perplexity when it uses Google, that data is still hidden. And
Got it.
so looking at the world from those old channels is very problematic, and most reports are built on that. So if you have a revenue report in HubSpot, it's very difficult to know how much of that is coming from ChatGPT versus, say, LinkedIn, for example.
Okay, okay. And is there something that have been doing with your clients in terms of sorting through that and improving the way that reporting works? What are some of the practices you've been implementing?
Right. So some of the tactics we have is using dedicated landing pages for paid platforms and keeping them out of organic tools, right? So
Okay.
keeping them away from Google, and that'll also keep it away from the AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're running paid search, clone your landing page, and then that way you know leads that came through that page were from your paid channel.
Mm.
You may need to beef up your local storage, in other words, your website trying to track users.
Yeah.
You'll want to make sure you're UTMing everything. So if you're running email and you use a UTM, that'll reduce the amount of traffic going into direct.
Mm.
Obviously, there's not much you can do about people opting out. I think the best thing that companies can do, especially in SaaS and B2B, is talk to the customer, right? A lot of clients want to explain the story about how they found you, because they want to see a good fit between you and what you do and what they need. So they'll
Mm.
often talk. Whenever I listen to sales recordings, I can see that the SDR or salesperson is very focused on, competitor names or key selling points. When a marketer listens to the call, they're picking up what the person searched for. So
Mm.
there's maybe two different skills at play. So I think it's very important for marketing to get the ability to search through those recordings, and then if they can see telltale signs, they can know that that's happening. And so what I've seen is people that have found products through AI are very proud of that, and they really want to voice that. So make
Mm.
sure that the sales team is capturing, oh, I came from Perplexity, or I searched for you on this, or I was looking for that, and that's how I found
Mm.
you. That might be the
Gotcha.
best data.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, so we've talked about channels, why traditional analytics has needs to start adapting, at least on the website and so on, to capture traffic, specific traffic and queries and searches coming from AI tools, AI search engines. Um, I think your next point was really about uh, how data sources, the sources of traffic, sources of data in general, is getting more and more fragmented. I think you've talked about that a little bit. Anything more to add on that
Yeah,
topic
so
about fragmentation?
there's obviously a huge uptick in the number of AI insight tools and reporting tools, right?
Hmm.
So there's companies that are very, very big, like Profound,
Yeah.
Peak AI, and then there's a whole lot of homegrown apps. I gave up counting at 380. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of apps, and that's a real list that I built, and I just couldn't keep up building that list anymore. So
Got
there's a
it.
lot of apps promising the world, right? The thing is that they're guessing, right? They don't know how many impressions are happening. So if you're buying these tools, I think a lot of them are overpriced in terms of what they offer at the moment, right? There's no real way to know how many searches are happening or how many prompts are happening, and a lot of the prompts are guessed. And so there's a lot of false positive information that's coming from these tools. So I think you need to be aware of that. And when you're talking to the companies, it's okay to push back. I think we're used to a lot of these tool vendors being the subject matter expert, and I think we need to maybe apply a bit of critical thinking. I've been on a number of calls with these tool companies on behalf of clients, and I've pushed back a little bit on what they've said, and they will, they I think they it changes their assessment of the customer, and they realize that a little bit more, and I think it's okay to do that because they're operating on with a little bit with blinkers on, and I think you need to be aware of what those blinkers are. There are definitely tools with more insights, so
Hmm.
it's a good idea to ask where those insights are coming from.
Got it. You're right. There's so many tools. So can you just double click on that a little bit? Meaning, what is it that can reliably be utilized in terms of any information relative to traffic coming in from AI LLMs to a B2B website, and then you know rather than pick and choose tools, let's talk about
Yeah.
what can you reliably utilize from across those tools.
I think one of the most important things to look at are your web server logs. And marketers haven't looked at web server logs since, gosh, the late 90s to early zeros, right? I haven't looked at log files since 2005. The reason log files are so important when somebody does a prompt, right? So, for example, a lot of people will know that their personal edition of ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude is now their advisor, right? So a lot of people might type in, knowing what you know about my organization, what's the best payroll software I should get, or
Hmm.
what what CRM should I use or move my marketing to, and you get sort of like a tailored answer. But at the same time, what's happening behind the scenes is that the LLM fetches the landing pages. So if you can see that your main competitor comparison page is being fetched 10 times a day by your server logs, you pretty much can count on the fact that you've been counted anywhere from 3 to 9 times that day. And there's only a few tools that integrate with that. Like, so I think if the tool doesn't integrate with your server logs, um, I would discount it out of hand, and that limits the field quite a lot. Then there are tools that buy data from browser extensions, and they sell data. So they're able to analyze the URL. And so they can tell you, for example, in ChatGPT, we saw at least 20 of these prompts being run. And so that gives you another level of insights that is quite good. And and then there's the ability to run those prompts for you and tell you how often you were mentioned. One of the problems you have as a user is that the LLM will skew your results. So it knows that you're working at your own CRM company, and so when you say who are the top 10 CRM companies, it it may list you but not for other users. So that's another reason that you might want to have a tool to help that sort of like personal bias removed.
Interesting. Okay, got it. I think the next topic, I'm sure a lot of folks listening will really want to understand, is this is a challenge, right, for any company, small, SMB, mid-market enterprise, is let's get to the meat of this discussion here in the session, which is how do you build trust? How do you build trust for your brand on the web in this current day and age where
Mhm.
you got to think beyond SEO, you got to think about all these AI search engines. Um,
So yeah,
what are do's and don'ts in that? I think this is probably going to be the most important part of the discussion so far. Yeah.
I think for a lot of brands, especially those that see themselves as the market leader, they're most at risk. A lot of them don't like to do comparison tables. They don't like to mention competitors. And so they're cutting themselves out of visibility.
Hmm.
It's very likely for, um, everyone is under time pressure, right? And AI is saving a lot of time. Let's say I'm looking for a tool to help reduce invalid clicks in my paid search program. I
Hmm.
could go through 10 different sites, and I could go to Capterra, and I could go to G2. Or I can ask ChatGPT, build me a table of the top 10 click fraud products and give it to me by price.
Mm.
If you're not listing your prices, which a lot of brands don't like to do,
Mm.
you're out, right? You're not even going to be included in the list. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and put up a table of pricing, but you have to talk about pricing, right?
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, a lot of brands that have built a big brand name don't want to give credence to smaller, entries. But those smaller companies will absolutely list your brand and everyone else's brand, and so they're
Mm.
going to rank, even though there are comparison sites, and we all know all of those comparison sites. They can only rank once in a set of Google results, which means there's 9 other slots open. If the query fan out goes up to 9, there could be as many as 50 pages. So if you're just relying on your entry in G2, well, the other 44 pages are going to be all those small competitors who are mentioning your name. So do
Yeah.
you really want to hand them control, or do you want to insert yourself? And I think that's a big thing for boards to get over, right? That they're now making themselves invisible.
Mm.
Another way of building trust is to build content with partners. Don't assume that, uh, you know, Trust Radius has your back. They don't. They want subscription money. So if you've got partners and you're used to putting case studies on your site, now it becomes imperative that your partners have those case studies on their site, because it looks as a second party validation, right? So
Ah.
you need to expand your content network quite a lot. I think PR is very important. um, what's not important, there's a lot of hacks, like you need schema, you need clear content. This doesn't really make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. For like, synthesis is very expensive, and so if you're going to hand an LLM 50 web pages to come up with one sort of answer, feeding it all that HTML and CSS that Google would normally crawl is just a lot of, it's going to cost a lot of tokens. So
Mm.
schema is not going to get processed by the LLM. So having schema in pages, it sounds technical and it sounds like this is the hidden secret that SEOs don't want you to know about. It's really rubbish. And Google have been very emphatic about that. And whatever your take on Google, they don't tend to lie about something that's as easily discoverable as that. So FAQ schema, you're wasting your time. Clear content, LLMs convert text into mathematical models. They don't read it in bullet points. They might output it in, you can ask it to assess the marketing tool world in a table, and it does that from a mathematical model. So the idea of writing clear structure is somehow better. It doesn't really add up, right? It sounds clever, but it's not.
Yeah.
I think um, being able to be cited in proper news articles, and making sure that your PR doesn't end up on a web page that's discoverable, but makes it up on a web page that is trusted itself, is much more important. So again,
Mm.
it's about quality over quantity. I would, if you were getting 50 citations last month for $5,000 spend, I would ask, how many citations could you get that are 1 to 3 over a 3 month period that would include a tech crunch or something much more superior like that?
Mhm. Okay. All right. So I think we talked about how do you build trust. You talked about getting partners, more partners involved, getting second party validation, right? Thinking beyond the directory providers like a Trust Radius and G2 and so on. Publishing content out to your network. I know one of the things you mentioned is multi-domain strategy. What is that, David? What's that about?
So, multi domain strategy is where companies expand beyond just their branded domain. This
Okay.
is something I've been doing for years. I think with the way the cost of building a website and the effort required to build a website has come down so much. I
Okay.
think it's crazy not to. I think so many companies do it so well, we don't even know they do it. For example, Nike operates 17 different domains. They own air.com. Um, they own a bunch of other domains that are Nike branded. Again, if you're on your phone or if you're talking to an LLM, you're not really aware that it's not Nike.com that's surfacing, it's some of their other brands. A company that I worked at in between my 26 years of doing SEO and 24 years of owning primary position, we built a number of satellite domains that targeted search. For example, We had our domain called chemtechnologies.com, and we had freeloadbalancer.com. Kemp got bought by a company called Progress Software out of Boston, $1 billion a year revenue company.
Hmm.
They still own freeloadbalancer.com, which cost us a couple $100 to set up. It generated about 60 leads a month.
Hmm.
And the reason it works so well is when you go to do a Google search, it ranks first for Freeload Balancer because it's in the name. And then the Chem Technologies and Progress site ranks 7 to 8. And these domains are competing with Google, they're competing with Microsoft, they're competing with AWS because load balancing is an integral part to cloud application delivery.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies that build a brand, for example, like Figma, that doesn't really match searches like interface design, UX design. And so it's great if you've built a brand, but it's very difficult if you're trying to protect a brand. So I think in today's world, having more than one domain is very important. And I'm seeing a lot more SEOs talking about that now,
Hmm.
where having two domains allows you to shore up your chances of being mentioned in an LLM, as well as ranking for keywords where if you're not in the top 10, you don't exist. So it might just be the only way. It can also reduce your paid search costs by 40% because of the domain match to the keyword that you're buying. So to me, it's a no-brainer.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So we've talked about building trust and a few different strategies around that. Um, let's talk about what the marketing team within a mid-market company or enterprise, even an SMB, um, you had some specific suggestions and tips for them in terms of how to be more effective in terms of what kinds of content do they create, how do they use AI vis-a-vis their content, how do they restructure the content on the website, how do they make it even more, call it AI friendly than
Of
they
course.
might be doing it today. So if you can, yeah, kind of cover that topic next. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for marketing teams. So typically your marketing team, they're subject matter experts in marketing. So in email, social, SEO, paid search, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so as you're building a product, especially if you're building new features and you're solving new problems, they typically have to rely on the product marketing manager or the product manager who, or the strategy manager, director who comes up with the new requirements. And they've typically had to wait for them to produce the marketing material. I think that LLMs now empower the marketing teams to become more independent. So if they want to ask a question, they can now ask an LLM and they can focus it on just their content. So they can build a space within the LLM, they can upload all of the technical documents, and it'll convert that technical document back into a really easy to understand bullet point list, and then they can question it, right? So they're taking a lot less time from the product manager. They can also then take briefs from the product manager and say, look, I'd like to craft a version for our channel partners so that they have different content or it speaks to a different audience. And so they can now, from one document, create 17 different documents. And then they can say, look, break this up into a series of tweets, or give this to me in a LinkedIn edition, or add some emojis so that it stands out if I put this on LinkedIn a bit more. And so something that would have taken hours or days, they can now do in minutes. So I think that's something that they can do. Another thing is, which I use a lot for, I get writer's block a lot. And so I might know what I want to target, but I don't know where to start. And it's a great tool to sort of like help build a skeletal framework for a blog post or an email article that I want to send out, or a LinkedIn update. And then it's also a great tool for reporting back, right? So just looking at high level traffic numbers, having ever growing traffic numbers, that runs out for every company. And ever growing traffic numbers don't mean ever growing leads, right? So you might want to take snapshots of particular data, like you were mentioned in a particular press release or in a particular article, or you achieved a rank position, or you had more leads from paid search. You can take screenshots from all those products, or analytics tools, and drop them into your LLM and say, look, build a report for me. And it could build a slide deck, or it could build an infographic. in seconds, and then you can edit that infographic, and then it makes it much easier to tell a story back to the organization than just
Mm,
giving them graphs. And I think that can save marketers a lot of time, because I think a lot of these times the reports need to be nuanced to what's happening, right? What's happening to the latest release, and that data isn't in your sort of generic reports, right?
mm,
Also, they're very good at helping you with pacing. So if you're spending money on ads and you're on the third day of the quarter, it could tell you how much you should adjust your daily spending for the quarter, or how much you spend per region and how much to adjust the daily budget. You can do mathematics like that very quickly.
mm.
And then also, you can take data from your Search Console or your LinkedIn reports and have it analyze it, and tell you what level of users are engaging with you. And you can build your own sort of custom reports that are, you know, particular to your marketing org.
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of different suggestions there. Yeah, on on all the different creative ways you can create so many nuanced and interesting kinds of content now that you.
Absolutely. I have projects where we now have Claude Cowork run websites, and so if you want to update a page, you chat to them on Slack as if they're a web designer. So
Hmm,
you're now not using a CMS anymore. You're asking bots to build and rebuild a page for you.
hmm,
Um, so
interesting.
s- some teams are quite far advanced. I don't think it's important to have everything AI enabled. I think it's where does it save you time, and what works for your team is is the best place to start.
Got it. Got it. Can you give us a sense of the again? I'm going to go back to the tools for a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
I think you mentioned a few things that are important to look for in some of these tools. Um, Also curious about how are the traditional SEO tools evolving, adapting to the world of AI, SEO, GEO? Are they in that included pack, if you will? Because you're calling out certain tools that fit the bucket in terms of they're looking at web server logs and they're looking at, a few other things. So if you can again recap the short list of things to look for in these tools, and what are
Absolutely.
is it a handful of one tool, three tools, five tools out of the 300 that you see as a short list that people
In
should be looking at? Yeah.
in the traditional SEO tools, let's call them the SERP tools, where
Yeah.
you have Ahrefs and SEMrush, they definitely are AI enabled, and in some cases, they're providing the data that other AI tools lean off. Um, the great thing about the traditional SEO tools is they give you the keyword research that leads to your visibility in the prompt, whereas the new AI tools only give you from there and up. So I think one of the attractive things about those tools is they're giving you from conception to reality. They suffer the same blind spots. And I think if you're already using them, then it makes sense to expand. However, I think that a lot of the tools that charge per domain aren't worth it. They're charging because they're seeing token value go up, token costs go up, and they're seeing maybe like AI value, or they need to demonstrate AI value to shareholders. And I don't think that's a good reason to pay for it. So, for
Hmm.
example, where you might have paid as an agency, you might have paid for 15 domains, you're now paying 15 times over for each project. And I think that's just a little bit too much to ask. So when you're talking to these companies, look at the data and then look at how much it's going to cost. So in some cases, it might be double the charge, and in some cases, it might be 10 times the charge. And I don't think that's worth it.
Got it.
I think also the tools that um, in SEO that sort of like somehow give you an SEO score, that's not realistic. Google have been very emphatic about SEO scoring, green lights, and things like that. There are a lot
Hmm.
of tools that really run on subjective ideas, right? Like your page title should be 65 characters. And there's no grounding for that. That's just what someone thinks is best case. And I think while it's important to make sure your website runs without errors, it's not additive SEO. It's something that should be done. It's something your web team should manage. But if you think that an AI tool can fix your AI problems, that's not realistic. There's
Mm,
also a new era of what we call programmatic SEO tools,
mm,
and they are. This is going to be a very short curve, but they're promising quite a lot. There are some very big companies that are advertising on TV that are using them. They may work for the moment with some big tools. There's a guy on X in Vancouver, Harpreet Singh, who I really recommend your audience follows on X. Great guy, very smart. He talks a lot about these tools. Google has made it abundantly clear it's in their radar. They are going to
mm,
go after AI generated content at scale. So there's
mm.
nothing wrong with AI content in SEO. And if anyone tells you that, you need to either push back or hang up. But when you use a tool that goes from producing one page to 1,000 or 5,000 or even 300 pages, that's not going to work in Google. Google is looking for it. It's not
Ah,
going to be immediate. It's a downstream trigger. And the penalty for that could knock you out of Google for a year. So avoid that at all costs. You don't need to produce 5,000 articles a week. It's not going to help you in the long term.
interesting, interesting. All right. So, just as we begin to wrap up, talk about the future. Here we are. It's April of 2026. Looking ahead to later this year, Q3, Q4. Talk about the evolution of AI SEO GEO. What are we looking at?
I mean, it's amazing just how much AI tools have evolved in the last few months. Their ability to produce graphics, their ability to build websites. There's a lot. I think that um, for SaaS companies, one of the big threats that's appearing are SaaS product farms where people vibe code, and so what's typically been a defensive mode for SaaS companies has been the ability to stay ahead and have people following in their wake, and that might be disappearing. So your only mode now might be marketing. So I
Hmm.
think marketing and product development have to be even more closely integrated with each other, um, and tied into each other, even potentially um, your development team helping marketing automate, helping them take daily tasks and automate. I think you're going to see a lot of products come to market. I think the rate of improvement is going to change. I think that one of the things that's interesting is that ChatGPT is not stealing as much space as get from Google as people thought. Right? If you look at Google's stock, if you look at their ads, those all indicators all seem fine. There are definitely areas where ChatGPT is ahead of the curve, like for example, cybersecurity, technical products, things like that. But you can't ignore Google. And so if you're looking at sort of like how much time to invest in AI, look at how many leads are coming from your other channels first. If you can't show that your leads are coming from LLMs, then don't give up on the other channels, right? Definitely invest in it and make sure that it's not because of a lack of coverage,
Yeah.
but I just don't see the user base there yet.
Hmm.
I think that might change. I've seen some SEOs say, look, Google might move all the way to AIO by the end of this year.
Hmm.
I think that's optimistic, but I think as much as half of searches could be AIO driven by the end of the year. So that's going to be a
Amazing.
big change
Wow.
for
Okay.
companies.
Yeah. I think in terms of everything you said, I'm certainly going to make a note of one thing you said, which is the only moat very soon is going to be marketing,
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
not product, because literally anybody can build product. The question is, how do you create awareness for your brand? How do you create trust in your brand? How do you get more people to invest in you because they trust you, they trust your business, they trust the services you offer, or trust the tech plus services you can offer them, that as being best in class, best of breed, so to speak. And
Absolutely.
then it's interesting you say that, because I've also had people tell me that it's no more about having the tech, it's about execution. It's
Mhm.
all about operationalizing and execution. And so I think we all seem to either we are all drinking the same Kool-Aid, or it's really what's happening. So we'll find out.
Definitely,
So,
definitely, 100%.
yeah. So I'm going to put up the thank you slide, David. If you can let people know best way for them to get in touch with you, to reach you, on and on. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I do a lot of podcasts on YouTube, so you can search for me there. I do a lot of deep dive technical explanations of how to do SEO, and also I'm very active on X and LinkedIn. So feel free to follow me there on LinkedIn, or on X is David G Quaid. Pretty easy to find.
Got it. So, folks, that concludes episode 55 of AI GTM Talks. Today's session was all about AI SEO, GEO, what's happening in the space. We were lucky to have David Quaid join us, who's definitely a deep dive subject matter expert in this area. And so, please make a note of David's information, follow along, and let's stay in touch. And look forward to seeing you all in the next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Thank you,